Hi viewers and welcome to Vision Matter. Today I'm going to introduce you one of the expert. His name is Professor Mohamed Abdel-Maguid. He is the Dean of Science, Engineering, Arts and Technology in the University of Suffolk. Hi Professor, welcome to the Vision Matter.
Well, Daba, thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you. Really, I'm appreciating that you are joining to this program. And I want to ask you, obviously, you saw this huge panicking and stress from all of the world. And what is your opinion about the COVID-19 and how you actually seeing this matter from your experience?
Well, Daba, COVID-19 came and took the entire world by surprise. And if I take a step back and reflect on it in the context of business and technology and innovation, some of the literature suggests that the world have moved from one innovation wave to the other. Starting from the first wave of innovation when we discovered the iron, moving to the steam power, and coming to the sixth wave of innovation where artificial intelligence and data science were coming, Internet of Things, the fourth industrial revolution, and smart systems in general. And then COVID-19 came, and I would hypothesize that once COVID-19 came, it started the seventh wave of innovation. And some of the things attributed to this seventh wave of innovation, first, it's the age of urgency. Things have to be done and done very fast. There is no time to ponder about things. There are no few months to put resources together. The world has to respond very fast. So it's the age of urgency. In the literature of business, the term VUCA, which stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, has been coming into practice. And I think once COVID-19 came and took us by surprise, the term VUCA now became a reality in everybody's sort of mind. Mm-hmm. And then one of the other things about the COVID-19 that came, it's the location-independent work revolution started, where location and work don't need to coincide together anymore. So these are a number of things that the COVID-19 kind of came and kick-started in this seventh wave of innovation. And in my view, I don't think that the world is going to run the same way as we have been used to it anymore.
Thank you. So that is really, I think, interesting. But as you are obviously educator, you are the dean of obviously the science and technology and arts and sort of thing. How do you see this teaching and learning? How much effect you can see at the moment, or do you think it is already shifted from teaching and learning in different direction? As you know, obviously, the teaching and learning is online now. Most of the university doing teaching and online based. So how are you seeing that after pandemic in these issues?
Okay, so within a couple of weeks, all the education sectors across the globe had to move their face-to-face teaching and learning into some form of an online remote delivery. Now, the world has been pondering about this for over a decade, and there have been a number of barriers that stopped the widespread and adoption of teaching remotely online. One of these were perceived sort of resistance from the teaching faculty to embracing teaching online, a perceived resistance of students to be taught online, and also the business model of most of the education sector was not predominantly geared up toward this type of education. Now, post COVID-19, I believe that what we used to call blended learning as a second modality of teaching and learning after pure face-to-face, I would hypothesize that this blended learning will become probably the main modality, where most of the education organizations will start and review how we're delivering the learning and teaching, and people would only need to travel from one location to the other only if the learning cannot take place remotely. For example, when you have to have access to certain laboratories or certain specialist equipment in a special environment, then people would locate into this. But many of the learning would now become remotely delivered first. I would hypothesize that this will be the norm. And this will address a number of important agendas. The sustainability agenda has always kind of looked at transport and carbon footprint and wastage of people time, and time equals lives, in traffic jams and commuting for no reason. Now, this would resonate with these important agendas, that there was a perception that online is not really going to work because people will resist it, we don't have the technology. Now, when the whole world had no other choice, people rose to this challenge and started to adopt it. So I would say that the genie is out of the bottle already, and I don't think it's going to come back into the bottle again. Students have tasted how convenient it is to study at their own home without having to travel for 2 or 3 hours to attend a couple of lectures, and staff members have found the same. But of course, this will not come without challenges, because remote working is a new modality of work, and mixing your personal space with your work or learning space would require a new way of adapting to this. Otherwise, it will cause problems and it will not succeed. So that's one thing in education. Now, there is another thing, which is this pandemic has showed us that solving problems is not based on a single discipline. No. You can't just have healthcare workers alone and they're going to solve the problems, or the engineers of various disciplines alone and they're going to be the heroes and solve the problems. Addressing this pandemic required every single discipline to work together, and required people to have multiple skills, even to do their own main job. Healthcare professionals had to brush up their technology skills. Engineers had to learn a bit about health and safety and healthcare, etc., etc. And the whole pandemic management had to involve economists, had to involve scientists, had to involve the law. A lot of changes needed to take place for the world to carry on moving once the restrictions of COVID-19 came, that required all these teams to work together, and required that each one in their own discipline to have more understanding and more skills in the other disciplines. So I would hypothesize that moving forward, the design of our programs will have more emphasis on this transdisciplinary approach. And I would kind of say, some of the literature actually say that traditional education produced the graduates with an I-shaped skills profile, like an I, very deep expert. The need now is for T-shaped profiles, where you have core expertise, but much breadth. And as people grow, they will have more of these breadths, these kind of breadth and width. So their skills profile become like a comb, where they have wide and they have a lot of depth. So the skills shapes will change, and this will demand that curriculum will have to change to rise. So these are some things with education.
Thank you very much. I think, yeah, that is very good input that you actually throwing to the world. And I just wondering, obviously, that as you said, blended learning and T-shaped model. But do you think you used to be people are not interested to give it the too much credit to the online or blended learning? But this mood probably, as you mentioned, I think you are actually saying that people will be understood that this is also another mode that people should follow up online teaching, and this will be tested by students, tested by teachers. So it actually now is probably proven that everybody can get more benefit. Are you saying this should be a follow up in the next step as well, or it will be a stop?
No, I think this is here to stay.
Mm-hmm.
And as you've rightly alluded to, in the past, delivering learning remotely or studying remotely, which was called distance learning,
Mm-hmm.
and previously it was correspondence learning before technology and online,
Mm-hmm.
was seen as a second grade education.
Yes,
You
correct.
go teach, you go and study by distance. This is if you can't really get some real education face to face for whatever reason. And this is like another sort of option that is not as good as the main thing, which is to be physically present. I think that this will be challenged.
Mm-hmm.
And also, what do we mean by qualification? And the value of a qualification will be challenged. And I would hypothesize that learners and employers would start and challenge the model of going to education to obtain a qualification into the real purpose of education, which is going to education to develop your skills and abilities. That's where you go to it, not to get a piece of paper called qualification. And I think that will be challenged as well.
Thank you, Prof. Now, I have one more, very interesting question. That do you think, as you are expert of technology, and I know you are working with many projects and many organizations, this online, obviously now people are actually doing most of the work from home. Do you think this will be causes, or is it actually making the opportunity for the big organization to these changes and adaptation of working from home? How do you see this from working from home as a phenomena, or it is like going to be adapted and people will get more benefit? What is your observation?
Okay. So in terms of work mode and employment, did I get your question right?
Yeah.
We're talking about now the work mode and employment.
Yes. Absolutely.
So having access to a broader global workforce through remote working and the use of video collaboration and other digital technologies as an accepted and tested model now is likely to change the mode of workforce development and the mode of employment. So I would hypothesize that moving forward, the gig economy will start and be more pervasive. So companies, whether they are large or small, I would hypothesize that they will start now and look at their workforce, and they will tap into the vast opportunities that they have now in terms of having access to experts across the world that they don't have to employ in full time. They can have proper, meaningful engagement with them and integrate them within their workforce in a more structured way than a freelancer. That's what part of what is called the gig economy is. I think that this employment modality will become more prevalent, and we will see change in organization structures, moving from viewing an organization as a big functional hierarchy into a model where organizations will start and build teams and network these teams together, and those team members can be anywhere in the world. And I believe that this is opening a huge opportunity, in my view, for the education sector, because education sector relies on access to talent and expertise that they can work to develop the learners. And the more that you can have access to this talent and expertise globally and can put them together in a structured way to serve novel curriculums that produce the right skills, the more effective the education experiences. So I think this will happen. But I see problems and challenges. If I just name something in the UK, I will say IR35. Well, IR35 as a HMRC regulation is a barrier to adoption of this model that we're talking about, where the regulation comes and says, well, no, you don't do this kind of quick interactions. You have to employ people. But this is not the model that we think, because we believe that people with expertise will be doing different jobs for different employers as part of the gig economy. So there are regulatory challenges, there are HR and contractual challenges, there are also the adoption and adaptation challenges. But I would hypothesize that this will be more pervasive in the future, and we will see more of this. And we have seen some of the models that challenged the standard modality of work and adopted gig economy, like Uber, for example. And there are lessons learned from how the regulatory and HR challenges have been managed with good practice and the practice to avoid.
Thank you, Prof. I think we are nearly finishing, and I want to ask you, obviously you can see that a huge panicking and the people are under stress that because it is actually changing of the world. And if we can take it like in stop world, obviously you can see like in the world is look like a stop and everything suddenly, coming to the end, and then obviously new change will be coming applied as you mentioned. What concluded remark, what message you can, obviously pandemic is not finished yet and we are still in the middle of somewhere, what you want to say to the world, what kind of things we should not worried, or what should we follow? Do you mind to say a few words like in your concluding remarks?
Okay, so I would kind of offer an invitation to generally policymakers and governments in general to have a moment of reflection. So the notion that because I have money in the bank, then at any moment I can use this money to buy the goods that I need. And there will always be somebody who have the product, who is willing to give me the product, and there is a mechanism of shipping the product from where it is to me in the right time that I need. And because I have the money, then there is no problem. Will always be products with someone willing to sell and a means of getting it to me when I need it. I think the COVID-19 have put a stop to this illusion. Yeah. We are in a world where some very basic personal protective equipment, PPE equipment, which is not really rocket science, it's not very difficult to manufacture. People are dying left and center because we don't have basic PPE. Yeah. Yes, the money is in the bank, sir. But if you don't have the skills and the manufacturing infrastructure and the raw materials handy to you to make it when you need it, you are in trouble, and we are in trouble. So that notion that if you have money, then you can buy whatever you want, this illusion needs to end. Yeah, that's one thing. The other thing that I would invite governments to look at, and in particular governments in some of the developed world and Western world, is that notion that by keeping just intellectual capacity and intellectual property rights and shipping all manufacturing away, and things will be fine. I think this policy have led now to a situation where skills are not available to solve the problems, because if you don't have manufacturing, if you don't have engineering, if you don't have enough science, you don't have enough of those scientists, technologists, and engineers to pull together and solve problems on the ground quickly when you need them. And you don't have manufacturing infrastructure. So the policies that have seen a kind of devaluing of manufacturing capacity, engineering capacity, and shipping everything, I believe now that there is an opportunity to kind of stop and reflect and see whether this was the right approach, or whether actually this is now leading to a national security hazard by not having these. Also, the kind of trends of I don't want to say a harsh word, stigmatization is a very harsh word, but the trend of devaluing the science and the technology and these kind of disciplines, which have put off many of our learners to go into these disciplines, is proving now to be not to the benefit of our country and not to the benefit of the world in general. So I would give an invitation to this. Final thing that I would say is that I'll go back and reiterate that the world moves and problems are solved by transdisciplinary teams, by people from all disciplines. When I'm talking about science and technology and engineering and medicine, I'm not really saying that those are more valuables than others. That would be the wrong approach. But these have been kind of neglected, and they need to be brought back, and bringing them back will require a lot more than what is already happening, because they have been dwindling for a long time. So that's one thing. I would point something simple, for example. Now the world is looking at the health professionals as the saviors of the world, and rightly so. Those people are putting their lives at risk, and they are very, very much needed in order to address the pandemic that we are in. But I would kind of invite the world to have us one moment of reflection and point another army that nobody actually thinks about. These are the armies of the telecommunication and connectivity. I would like you to imagine that if we didn't have unified networking capacity that can carry this audio, video, data in masses to connect the world, how would the world look like? I think the COVID-19 pandemic, from a scientific point of view, the progress of finding a solution would be sent back to the Stone Age. Even addressing the basic health needs requires the core connectivity, so that wouldn't happen, and the whole economy will come into a ground. Now, telecommunication is one of my areas of work, and telecom networks are never designed to cope with sustained very high utilization. So the telecom infrastructure that we have an army of people, from colleagues who work in companies like BT Openreach, EE, Vodafone, Virgin. I don't want to miss anybody. All these companies that provide the connectivity are working round the clock to take a network that is designed to serve a particular capacity with particular availability that relies on bursty traffic mainly to manage the load, into 10 times even more of the load sustained almost 24 hours.
Yes.
And one of the kind of things that enable this is good insight from researchers, from engineers, and from decision makers that enabled the UK infrastructure to be future-proofed to an extent that enabled this workforce to step in and push it to the limits and respond to the new demands. Telecommunication networks are not just keeping the economy going. It's not just connecting the healthcare workforce.
Mm-hmm.
Telecommunication network is keeping our emotional and mental and social well-being. Imagine if I can't talk to my mom can't talk to me, we can't connect with our families, we are sitting socially isolated in our homes,
Mm-hmm.
unable to talk to anybody. It is a situation that I don't want to imagine. I've just given this example to say that there are so many people from different disciplines that have rose to the big challenge that this COVID-19 wave has thrown at us.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many people that deserve thanks from everybody, that they are operating, they're working in silence, and nobody knows anything about what they're doing. I've just given an example of the telecoms, but there are so many others who are working round the clock. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Abdel-Maguid. I think you put a lot of really inside experience, and I think world could learn something from your experience and what you're saying to this COVID-19. And I hope we all will see the good thing in the future. And all the best. And thanks again to your contribution for this program today. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Daba, for the invitation. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.